Hi, good evening everybody, and welcome to the Daily Rambam She'ar 3 chapters per day, lesson 220, She'ar Avot haTum'ah from chapter 9 until 11. The topic of our She'ar today is being originated from Masechet Shabbos. Right at the beginning, the Talmud describes a very unique gathering where the scholars were gathering in the attic of one of the sages, Chizkiyo ben Hananiah ben Gorion, in order to solve the need to maintain and not to get rid of the book of Yechezkel. The reason, because they found over there some words that may contradict the words of Torah, and while they were there, it was a one-time event that different halachos and rulings, especially in Hilchos haTum'ah v'Tahara, they were discussed amongst the schools of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. And though generally in Shas the ruling will be according to Beis Hillel, this was an exceptional event where all the rulings were according to Beis Shammai. And regarding the interpretation of this event, whether it should be viewed as a positive event or a negative event, so there is quite an argument amongst the scholars whether it is an event since the rulings became as Beis Shammai, and for that reason this day is so hard and difficult for the nation of Israel to tolerate that much severities of degrees. There is another explanation that on the contrary, since even Beis Hillel at that time they admitted that it would be necessary to accept the ruling of Beis Shammai regarding those specific decrees, so they felt that sometimes in order to prolong the lifespan of any utensils, so hardening it will be necessary. In this case, the hardening is to adapting and embracing a more severe approach in connection to customs of rules of impurity and so on. So, as I've mentioned, 18 halachos, 18 gzeiros decrees, most of them in connection of Tumah and Tahara was introduced there, and some of them we have been covering the previous days, and today we will be covering in the first chapter some of the gzeiros. The first gzeiro is the gzeiro of Mayim She'uvim. Mayim She'uvim are such water that a human being got involved by drawing from a natural source of water into utensils or into pipes or into any form of human involvement. At this point, they not any longer consider to be whether a mayon or whether in a natural reservoir of water which is halachically acceptable as a mikveh, but they become she'uvim, become drawn by a human being. So they introduced a gzeira, a decree, that they should make a person who was immersing roishoi verubai, his head and the majority of his body, or they fell in the amount of 3 lugin upon roishoi verubai, upon his head and the majority of the body. So the person who went through such an experience becomes impure himself and turns those water to be impure as well. The degree of tumah that he is getting after those water fell upon him, or he immersed himself in this water, he becomes a second degree of tumo. It's called sheni letumo. If he, after immersing in those water, touching any type of food, the food becomes shlishi letumo. If he happens to touch any liquids, as we have learned yesterday, liquids are turning to become rishon letumo since they came in contact with a source of tumo. The minimum amount that is necessary for the water to be is shloish lugin, which is approximately 1.5 liters or about 8 ounces. The reason for this impurity is rooted in a historical fact that is connected to the type of mikvahs in their times, that they were not as clean, and as a result of it, people were taking a shower after immersing themselves into the mikveh, and after a while, the majority of the people were under the wrong impression, that what makes them pure is the shower that they're taking last. And as a result of this imagination, they were mezalzel, they were downplaying or not paying sufficient respect to the mikveh, and they were immersing themselves in the mikveh without the proper intention to purify it. And for that reason, they imposed this type of tum'ah upon any person who immersed in those mayim she'uvim, again, whether he immersed or whether they fell upon him. The impurity is effective not only upon a person who was initially impure and part of his purification process, he went into this mayim she'uvim, so-called shower, after the mikveh. Even if a person was never impure to begin with, he is perfectly pure, and he just poured upon himself 3 lugim mayim she'uvim, or he immersed roishei veruboi into this mayim she'uvim, he becomes impure. However, in order for him to become tohir, it's not necessary to wait the ha'arev shemesh until sunset after he goes to the proper mikveh, but even just by immersing himself in a proper mikveh, he becomes pure, and it is not necessary for him to wait until ha'arev shemesh. Since this particular tumah is a rabbinical in nature, so they have not imposed the level, the severity of decree to make him wait until ha'arev shemesh like any other tumah to complete the process of tahara. Same way, if a person was consuming impure food and he becomes tomei, again a rabbinical impurity, all it is necessary for him to immerse in a mikveh without any need to wait for the ha'arev shemesh for the sunset. In order to become impure in this type of tumah of mayim she'uvim, there is specific requirement. The water must come upon his head and the majority of the body. If it reached only the head but not the majority of the body, or only the majority of the body without the head, he still remains pure. Further than this, it will be okay to have the water being poured upon him from different vessels, as long as they are one after the other. B, they are not more than 3 vessels. However, if this measurement of Gimel Luvin was achieved even simultaneously or one after the other, not by 3, the only way it was able to achieve the measurement is more than 3, 4 vessels, one after the other, he still remains pure. He's not becoming Tomei. Also, if other liquids were mixed together with the water in the amount, he again remains pure. As we have mentioned before, that since the person becomes impure as a result of this Mayim She'uvim, he is transmitting back the Tumo to those water, and though that he becomes Sheni Letumo, the water, like any type of water that coming in touch with a source of Tumo, the water becoming Rishon Letumo. Additional decree that they have introduced is the Tum'ah that came a result also of another type of behavior which were common in those days, where they were storing the Terumo next to the Torah scrolls, under the presumption, since the Teruma is holy and the Torah is holy, what a perfect idea to park holiness next to holiness. The only problem that the mice were attracted to the food, and while they were searching for food consumption, they were destroying the Torah scrolls. So, as a mean to fight with this phenomena, they have introduced the impurity to any type of scrolls. Though originally the impurity was introduced to the Torah scrolls, but it was extended also to Tefillin and to Megillois and other type of Sifrei HaKodesh, even to texts of Hallel or Shema that they were designed for children in order to train them how to read. So this type of Tumah were introduced as well. The level of Tumah that they have imposed on those Kisvei HaKodesh, the Torah scrolls, was a Sheni, a second degree of Tumah. For that reason, if they came in contact with Tumah, so the Tumah have turned to be the Shlishi Letumah. Same way, also, if the hand of a person have touched the Torah scroll, they become also a Sheni Letumah. Though that, as we have learned yesterday, that a hand of a person can become Tomei only from a Rishon Letumah, but this is a exceptional source of Tumah. When a person touches a Torah scrolls, he becomes a Sheni, a second degree of Tumah. The Rabbi is mentioning in one of the Sichos a question how the Kohanim in the Beis Hamikdash were able to wear the tefillin. And he is mentioning that the question is based upon the assumption that they were, in those days, were wearing the tefillin as a practice a whole day. And for this reason, most likely they were wearing their tefillin outside the Beis Hamikdash before they walked in, and outside they were already they were affected by the impurity of the Tumas Sforim and how they can enter to Beis HaMikdash. There is a possibility to say that in Beis HaMikdash they had lockers, storage, where the tefillin were placed only in Beis HaMikdash, or perhaps due to the fact that in Beis HaMikdash the decree of Yodayim, the decree of this impurity, was not existed, so possible that they have expanded the exemption for this in Beis HaMikdash to the stage where the Kohanim were starting the tefillin wearing process before the Beis HaMikdash. In fact, throughout the Sikha, the Rebbe leaves it so-called open, and he suggests further investigation in this matter. In the second chapter, the discussion is about the degree of haTum'ah a person is going through after he was affected from haTum'ah, the source of haTum'ah. So before he immersing himself into the mikveh, he is considered to be a rishon letumah, and after his tvilo being immersed in the mikveh, as long as before shkia sachamo, before the sunset, he is considered to be a tvul yoim, a person who throughout the day went to the mikveh, but it is before set, and his level of tumah will be a sheni letumah. We must introduce ourselves to two terms regarding to tumah. There is one term which is called metame, a person who is able to transmit tumah to an object which the object itself is able to transmit tumah to another object, though obviously not in the same degree, but nevertheless still it is transmittable. Then there is what is called a person is capable to be poisel, which means he is able to transmit tumah to an object, but the object is the final stage where the tumah from there cannot be transmitted any longer. So a tvul yoim who touched a food of tumah, he made them shlishi, because a tvul yoim, as we said, he is sheni, he is second. So the food of tumah that he touched becomes shlishi. Now, he was turning this object into a psul, because in tumah more than shlishi, it's not being transmitted any further. Same way, when a tvul yoim touches even mashkin, even liquids, so though we have learned that typically mashkin, when they come in touch with any source of tumah, the mashkin, the liquids turning to be first, but there is one exception, and the exception will be tvul yoim. A tvul yoim who touches mashkin, the mashkin will be shlishi and won't be able to transmit any further. The tvul yoim is able to bring in tumah upon kodesh, upon something that is part of the offerings in the temple, and he turns them to be revi'i. And again, in kodesh, same way as in tumah, the third generation is the final stage where tumah cannot be transmitted from there any further. When it comes to kodesh, revi'i, the fourth one, is the final destination where cannot be transmitted from there any further. Towards the end, the Rambam summarizes and wraps up regarding object as human, as food, as drinks, and kelim. How far can they go? So biblically, a human can be or haTum'ah or rishon letumah. more than this biblically cannot go any further. However, mid'Rabbanon, due to the decree of Mayim She'uvim, Tvul Yoim, and so Sifrei HaKodesh, Oichlim Tmeim, all those gzeiros that we have covered, a human being can become sheni letumo as well. However, even mid'Rabbanon, even rabbinically, a human and a utensil will never going to be shlishi or revi'i letumo. When it comes to food, food will never be haTum'ah. As far as mideoiraiso, biblically, food will be rishon and sheni, and rabbinically, they will be shlishi and revi'i. When it comes to drinks, from biblically, they will be able to be av, like we know about mashkei hazav, the liquids of the zav, and rishon as well. When it comes from divrei sofrim, rabbinical decrees, they will be able to be also shlishi, the third and fourth generation. The third chapter of today's lesson deals with the Torah sources that teaching us that even in a context of chulin, something that is not trumo and not kodesh, the first will be able to become tomei and transmit tumo. The sheni in chulin will be posul, but won't be able to transmit tumo any further, and for that reason, the sheni in chulin won't be able to transmit to shlishi. Example: if there is a sheretz, a radon, falls into a earthenware dish, and inside the earthenware dish there is a food. So the kli, the utensils, this is a rishon, which gets tumo from the sheretz who fell in the air of the ware of the kli, and then the earthenware who became rishon, the sheretz is haTum'ah, the earthenware becomes rishon, and the food that was inside the kli becomes sheni. And that's why you cannot transmit tumo any further, because it is chulin. The source in Torah that when it comes to tumo, though, the sheni is able to transmit tumo to a shlishi, since when the Torah covers about Tvul Yoim, and the Torah describes Uvo hashemesh vetoher ve'achar yoichal min hakodoshim. Kodoshim in that context is trumo. So, which means that only after ha'arev shemesh he will be able to touch it without making it impure. Implies that before ha'arev shemesh, while he is a sheni, had he would touch the trumo will be tomei. So I see over here that in a context of trumo, a sheni will be able to make a shlishi. When it comes to kodesh, it is able to transmit until a fourth generation. The way it's being derived from a person who is mechusor kippurim. Mechusor kippurim, as we have covered a few times, is one of those four categories of zov, onido, and yoledes before they brought the korban. They are allowed to eat trumo, but they are forbidden from Kodoshim. So we have learned in a way of a Kal V'chomer, if someone who is allowed to eat Tumo, which is a Mechusar Kippurim, but he is forbidden to eat Kodesh. So somebody who is forbidden in Tumo, which is a Tuvul Yom, and we know that he is already making a Shlishi B'Kodesh from a Posuk, so how much more so that he will be able to make a Revi'i B'Kodesh. And for that reason, there is a rabbinical decree that if a regular meat, which is chulin, touched a meat that is kodesh, will be able to passel it. And for that reason, a normal basar will be considered to be shlishi lakodesh. When we're speaking about kodesh in that context, we're referring to all types of korbanos, whether meat offerings or whether flour offerings, chalois, lechem aponim, and so on. Thank you very much and have a good night.